This video is about the U.S. Constitution. We're going to look at the structure of it. The rest of the year we're going to spend looking in detail at each one of these different articles. But for now, I just want you to understand what the structure is and be able to locate some things in your Constitution if I ask you to. So the U.S. Constitution is broken down into 7 articles. And when we talk about an article in the Constitution, we're just talking about different sections of the Constitution. And I hate to use that word sections, but because each article is broken down into smaller sections. But for right now, each article is about a different topic in the Constitution. And so then when we actually look at the Constitution, the articles themselves are broken down into sections, and then the sections are broken down into clauses. So one of the things I'm going to ask you to do is to do a handout where you're just looking up things, and I will give you an article and a section and a clause, and you should be able to find that information. There's only going to be a few things that I ask you to actually memorize. Otherwise, you're going to have a copy of the Constitution in front of your hand. You're just going to have to be able to navigate through it. So any questions, or almost all the questions that deal with the legislative branch, Congress, our lawmaking body, is going to be found in Article 1. So Article 1 is about our legislative branch. We call our legislative branch Congress, and Congress is responsible for making the laws. The second main topic is covered in Article 2 of the Constitution, and it's the executive branch. And in the executive branch, you're going to find the duties and the responsibilities of the president, and that's also included in that is the vice president. So it is their function to take the laws that Congress makes, the legislative branch makes, and to enforce those or to execute those laws, put them into effect. The next main topic that's discussed in the Constitution, Article 3, is the judicial branch. And the judicial branch is our court system. And so it is their responsibility to interpret the laws. So Congress, the legislative branch, makes the laws, and that's all outlined in Article 1. Article 2 is the executive branch. They're responsible for carrying out, enforcing, executing the laws. That's the president and the vice president. And then Article 3 is the judicial branch, and they are responsible for interpreting the laws, determining if laws and things that the government does is constitutional. And so this is our 3 branches of government. The concept here that we're looking at is called separation of powers. So we separate the powers into different branches of government so that no one branch is all powerful. And then each one of them has a check on the other, and that's that principle of checks and balances. And so you have the 3 different powers spread out. They check each other to make sure that no one branch of government is too powerful. The next section, the next topic in the Constitution is Article 4, and that deals with how the states relate with each other. We have a national government that's in Washington, D.C., and they make laws for everyone. And then all 50 states also have their own laws. So when the Founding Fathers wrote the Constitution, they realized it was very important to just give some guidelines, some instructions on how the states would deal with each other. And so we will look at that in a lot greater detail, but for right now you just need to know the relationship among the states, how they relate to each other, how they deal with each other, is found in Article 4. Article 5 is about amending the Constitution. This is one of the major weaknesses that we'll discuss when we get to the Articles of Confederation on the articles were never amended because it took all 13 of the original states to amend it. So it is still very, very difficult to change the Constitution. There have only been 27 amendments or changes made to the Constitution. So it's not something that they want done very easily, but they don't want to make it impossible. So Article 5 is a very, very short article, and we will once again look at that in greater detail. But for right now, all you need to know is that if there is a question about amending and changing the Constitution, you're going to find that information in Article 5. Article 6 of the Constitution discusses national supremacy. The Founding Fathers realized that by having two governments, state government and national government, there would be conflicts. And so Article 6 says is that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and if there are any conflicts between state law and national law, that the national law is going to be the one that we should follow. It's going to be the supreme one. And if there's a conflict between national law and the Constitution, we have to follow the Constitution. So there's really what's called this ladder of supremacy that determines if there is a conflict between different laws at different levels of government, which one is going to be the one that we need to follow. So at the top of this ladder, you have you have the Constitution. After that, on the next rung of the ladder, you have two different things actually. You have federal laws and then you have treaties. And what you need to understand is sometimes you'll have a treaty that conflicts with a national law or a national law that conflicts with a treaty. And in that case, the one that you go with is the one that is most recent. So if there was a treaty that was done back in the late 1700s or the early 1800s or whenever we would have signed a treaty, if we have a new law, a new federal law that conflicts with that, we're going to go with the newer law. But then if later on we get another treaty, then we're going to follow the treaty. So it's what's most recent is the one that we're going to follow. So you have the Constitution first, federal laws and treaties fall on the next one. Then you have state constitutions. All 50 states have their own constitutions. They cannot violate a national law. Under state constitutions, you have state laws. State laws can't violate the state constitution. They can't violate federal law. And then at the lowest rung of the ladder are local laws. A local law cannot violate a state law. It cannot violate the state constitution or a federal law or the Constitution. And so then finally, Article 7 is ratification. I have students who do not understand what the term ratification means and they confuse it with amending. Ratification, make sure that you understand this, is how we formally approve the Constitution. Just because you have gentlemen who didn't like what was going on at that time sitting in a room writing this document doesn't mean that anybody is going to follow it. And so Article 7 is just one sentence long, and it says that 9 of the 13 states have to vote in favor of this new Constitution before they will be required to follow it. And so Article 7 is how the Constitution goes into effect. You have to have 9 of the 13 states. Once we get 9, then according to the Constitution, this document will be in effect for those states that ratify or formally approve it. So I'm going to click on this real quick so we can actually see a copy of the Constitution, and you will have a copy of this in your notes at all time. You should write on this. You should make notes on this. But we have the preamble first, and you've already learned about that. Then Article 1, like I said, is the legislative branch. And so here is a section. You have your articles broken down into sections. Section 1 is just, only has one clause in it. If you'll notice, Section 2 has clauses 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And on your copy, you're going to notice that some of the print is darker and some of it's a little lighter. So what I need for you to understand is because we do have 27 amendments to the Constitution, anything that you see in this lighter shade is going to be something that is no longer actually part of the document because we have an amendment. And you're going to see several. When we get rid of slavery with the 13th Amendment, anything that dealt with how we're going to count the slaves and how we're going to enumerate and all those things, different things, anything that you see, all of this is a change because of an amendment. So Article 1 deals with the legislative branch, which is Congress. We're going to spend a lot of time on different ones of these. Once again, here's something that's been amended um, dealing with the slave trade. Article 2, the executive branch. Here's a whole entire clause. Article 2, Section 1, Clause 3, because we've changed with the 12th Amendment how we vote or elect the president, all of this no longer is valid because we have an amendment that supersedes that. Here, this is changed because of the 25th Amendment. So Article 2, once again, executive branch. Article 3, judicial branch. Article 4, this talks about how we relate, the states are going to deal with each other. Article 5, once again, extremely small. This is how we make changes to the document. Article 6, talking about national supremacy, talking about the Constitution as the supreme law of the land. Article 7, we need 9 states to ratify. And then going forth, we have all of the founding fathers who signed the Constitution before that could go into effect. The rest of this, don't worry about that. We have the amendments to the Constitution down here, and that will be in a separate video. But make sure there's a link. You need to make sure that you print off a copy of the Constitution so that you have that. And I would put that in the very front of your 3-ring binder so you have that at all times.